Retro. No.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code Stardust to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hi, this is Claudia Gray, the author of several Star Wars books, and you are listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. May the Force be with you.
Hello, Star Wars fans, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithling.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we have one of our favorite returning guests for this episode. You know him from the Album Cockpit Podcast and his work with Fantatrax. Welcome back, Ross Hollebon.
Hello, friends. Great to be here and so excited to talk about our Bad Batch buddies.
Heck yeah, it's so good to have you back.
Yeah. So this, I think, is your third time with us, if I remember correctly. So, I've been excited to have you back on the show and get some of your thoughts here on the Bad Batch. And so this is normally where I tell everybody what we're going to be doing, but we've done that. So, Jay, just want to remind everybody where we can be found around the internet.
Of course, Dennis. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
And Ross, where can everybody find you?
Find me at Ross Hollebon on X, at Popstar Indie on Instagram, and at Album Cockpit Podcast on Instagram, and finding that on Substack as well.
All right. So the dish is lined, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, and we're now broadcasting to the galaxy. This will be our full spoiler, I repeat, full spoiler discussion of episode 13 of the 5th and final season of the Bad Batch, which is called Into the Breach. So, Jay, if you want to go ahead and give us a summary, and I typed this out fast, so I hope there's no mistakes.
I'm sure it'll be great. Here we go. Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair, with Vice Admiral Rampart in tow, rendezvous with Echo and a stolen Imperial shuttle at the abandoned cloning facilities on Borovio. Once reunited, they create a plan to infiltrate an Imperial space station on Coruscant to acquire the coordinates for Tantiss. After successfully infiltrating the space station at Coruscant, they determine a science vessel is headed for Tantiss. Echo sneaks aboard and disables the proximity detectors so that the rest of the Bad Batch can hitch a ride with their stolen Imperial shuttle by locking on to the vessel. Meanwhile, on Tantiss, Omega befriends the Children of the Vault and begins creating an escape plan.
All right. Ross, sit put for just a second because I got a couple questions for you. But Jay, what did you think about this episode overall?
It went by so fast. I did not look at the runtime on this, but it seemed like the second that it was started, it was over. And so I was just transfixed the entire time. And of course, the very end just kept you on your seat as well. But I thought it was a great episode overall.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. This one just moved and got going and didn't really give you much of a chance to come up for air. Ross, what did you think about it? And what have your feelings been about the Bad Batch overall this season? I've had an opportunity to hear you talk about it in a place or two, but just for our listeners, fill everybody in on what you think.
Yeah, I mean, the energy and the action is fantastic. The character development continues. I really like how they keep getting waves of these characters kind of each performing different roles within it. And they kind of keep bobbing and weaving as to who's being the leader here, who's being the antagonist, who's all these different elements, like with the cameos that they've worked in throughout the season so far. And knowing that we only have 2 episodes left, it is edge of my seat and basically scared to death every episode, hoping someone else isn't going to be offed that I'm a fan
Mhm.
of.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
a big concern this episode. And as much as I hated to see Tech die at the end of last season, it was probably one of the best things they could have done for the show and keeping viewers invested and on the edge of their seats. It just created so much tension on an episode to episode basis by doing that.
So I have
So,
to ask though, real quick,
sure.
Ross, did you think that maybe Wrecker was gonna die last episode? Did you have that feeling based on what you just said?
As it kept, as that truck or that prisoner transport was moving, and Fee's like, "Hey, I'm trying to get there," but yeah, I was just like, "No, this is not gonna happen this way. This is
Yeah.
not gonna happen this way." So I'm 100% with you. I was afraid it was gonna happen right there. I was just like, this isn't Wrecker enough for him to go off this way.
You know, one of the things that I did not realize until after we talked about that episode is if you look at one of the camera angles of Wrecker when he is on the turbo tank and he's getting ready to jump over to Fee's ship, it's extremely similar to an angle we got with Tech when he was about to plummet to his doom at the end of season 2.
Mm,
And I can't imagine that wasn't intentional, but they're doing that to us. They keep playing with us and our emotions. With
yeah.
every episode, it feels like there's somebody that could go. And yeah, okay.
It's diabolical Dave Filoni doing his thing to the fans.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Okay, so this episode starts on the planet Wayland at Mount Tantiss. We're in the vault. The kids get woken up, and this is when Omega gets to meet the rest of the crew. And she first meets Eva, who's playing with Omega's old doll. And then she gets to meet Jax, who's the Murialan, Sammy, where we get a name for her for the first time, which is the Pantoran, and Bairn, who is the little kid that we got to meet last time. And then the kids warn Omega that, stay out of trouble, and they don't like it too much if they talk too much together, and don't cause any problems. So Omega has come a long way since we met her in the first season, and she immediately steps into a leadership and caretaker role in all this. And I find it really interesting that she notices the doll, but she
Mhm.
never ever says anything about it being her doll
Mhm.
through this episode. So, what did you think about Omega's introduction to the kids, Ross?
I thought it was super fun. I love how it almost immediately becomes a prison yard.
Mhm.
Like, that's the feel I'm getting the whole time, and Omega feeling that there is kind of a power vacuum, or, "Hey, you know what? I've got the confidence. I've already been through this. I'm gonna figure a way out." And she has that confidence, and she is kind of mesmerizing the other kids a little bit as they go through. So as they're explaining how tough it is and this and that's going on, she's like, "Yeah, but I've done some things too." So I love how they're starting to look up to her almost immediately, but her just owning the entire situation, and it's not too big for her. She's like, "I'm gonna figure a way out."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about how far Omega has come since the first season. I was thinking about that even while I was watching this last night, and I thought her poise and her presence, with everything that she's been through and all the experiences that she's had and everything that she's learned has really shaped her in such an amazing way. And it really hit me that a couple of things actually hit me. One, how much she's starting to look like Boba and the other clones,
Mm.
just in her facial features, she's maturing, and I'm sure that that is an intentional decision, on the part of the animators on this. And maybe it's just the way that they're drawing her facial expressions that makes her look a little bit more wizened, a little more, mature. And to your point too, Dennis, when she saw the doll, she was like, "Nice doll. Where did you get it?" She wasn't like, "Hey, that's my doll," like you said. And then she also wasn't very, in dealing with these other kids, It wasn't like, yeah, I know, I'm good. I'm that, she's very humble, and she just knows what she knows, and she's very, very kind, very compassionate on a level that, again, these kids really, really admire.
Hmm. Yeah, we're going to skip around a little bit, I think, to talk about her in one fell swoop. One of the things that impressed me about this is that there's been a trust issue with the kids with all the adults that are in this facility. That Nala Say was kind to them, but then she disappeared, and they don't understand the reason why she's not there. And it doesn't matter if you tell them that they're kids. Someone that they kind of looked up to disappeared from their lives. The Dr. Emerie is trying to be kind, but she's not particularly good with kids when it comes out. She does not know how to develop a rapport with them, and she can only make half promises. I don't want to quite call them empty promises, but she says she's looking out for their best interest, but there's only so much she can do there. Omega goes in and knows how to build that rapport. She says things like, "Hey, you guys want to hear a secret?" And then
Mhm.
she reveals to them, that little map that she made of the vault, and that she stole a tool, and she's escaped from here once before, and she's going to get him out. Now, that's a tricky thing because they're expecting her to deliver on that promise. And so she better be able to do it. And so there's a lot riding on what she told them. What'd you think about that, Ross, with her getting their hopes up like that?
I think she backed it up right away.
Mhm.
Again, even if it's a fake it till you make it, she is doing it. Like she, putting her arms together, her hands together, so her arms are up and she can reveal
Mhm.
what she stole off the tray. She's just very smooth in everything that she's doing. She's so calculated. You're seeing everything that she learned from the members of the Bad Batch and how she's putting it into play. But also when she says she's broke out before, she says she had training. She wasn't like, "Hey, I did this." It was, "I had training and we were able to do this. So, and now I'm going to take you guys with me because I'm going to do it again." So the fact that she goes in with just the utmost bravery of, and also saying, with that little chip on her shoulder, "I like a challenge." When she's walking back and they're like, "Oh, they're going to wonder where you went." And she goes back there and takes the wall apart and it all starts going to hell. And you just wonder like, "Oh my God, how is she going to put all this back together?" But she manages it because she's Omega.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, and she's like you said, she's just so smooth, and to your point too, Dennis, with the whole thing with Emery just not having any skills. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. She's basically like one step up from a protocol droid, just because of the fact that she just doesn't have a whole lot of humanity, even though she's a human. She's just not been exposed to the kind of worldly sorts of things and interworldly sorts of things that Omega has. And we've seen Omega interact with kids of all types before. She was playing with the Twi'lek kids, even back with Tup, and his wife. And then when they went to Pabu, and then there was also that one with the kind of the Lost Boys, the kids in the mine sort of a thing. And so she's kind of got this way, obviously with other kids her age, but also just to the point that she just knows how to work the world.
Mhm. You guys both bring up some good points, and it's making me realize that in a way, Emery is not too different in that regard than most of the Bad Batches were when they first met Omega. They didn't.
True.
Rucker got on famously with Omega, but the rest of them didn't have any children skills to speak
Mhm.
of. Jay, I still use this term that you coined way back at the beginning of the season about how Omega domesticated Crosshair.
Oh,
In a
yeah.
way, she domesticated the entire Bad Batch, if you think
Mhm.
back far enough. And they didn't want to bring her along, but then once she was in trouble, they couldn't abandon her, and they all had to figure out how to talk to her. At one point, she had to get through to Hunter that she's part of the team. She couldn't be left behind. She had to get come to an understanding with Tech that Omega is looking for some sort of warmth and human connection, and Tech had to remind her, it's like, Crosshair made his decision. I don't agree with it, but I have to respect it. And even though I may not show emotions the same way you do. That doesn't mean I don't have them. Similar, Echo was probably the most level 1 of all of them there. And then the season we've seen what's happened with Crosshair. And so I feel like it's just kind of a natural thing for the clones. They don't know what to do with kids and those type of relationships when it comes down to it.
Because technically they never were kids, they
Mhm.
never went through that stage of development. They were so, accelerated that they just skipped right over all of that.
Well, and I think a ton of credit needs to go to Nala Se, because she treated Omega like a child and taught her things as she went. It wasn't just a typical clone upbringing. She brought her up as a child and taught her some of that empathy and how to interact with people and things. So I think that makes her that allows that heroic trait within Nala Se as well.
Mhm.
Mhm. And even with AZ1, I mean, even though
Yeah.
he's a robot, a droid, she had a really good relationship, and AZ was very human-like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, great call.
I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about Dr. Emerie and Dr. Scalder. There's this disagreement there. Dr. Scalder doesn't approve of the toys that have been left there for them. She doesn't like the kids mingling together. And Emerie comes out and says, this is the program I'm designed. I'm the chief scientist. I put these there. I feel like they're appropriate. What do you make of all that? Is this the cap on what Emerie is going to do? Or do you think she suspects that Omega's up to something more, and she's kind of turning a blind eye to it and using her authority to run interference, for lack of a better description?
I mean, I think it could absolutely be some of that.
Mhm.
I also think it's just the culture of the Empire. So seeing their interactions makes me think of the ISB during Andor. And it's just like
Mm.
they're all trying to take steps on each other. How do I get ahead of you? Like, I want your job. It's so cutthroat, and it's so, hey, how can I take the next step to get your seat and push you out of the way? So I think that also comes into play. And especially when you have someone named Scalder, like it is, this is don't touch that hot water right there, because it's gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jay?
Well, I kind of wonder with Emery, I've been saying all along that I feel like she's going to end up being an asset to Omega and to the rest of the clones. And I do still definitely feel that way because it was quite obvious from what she was saying, as you were mentioning, Dennis, I'm the chief science officer. This is my decision. It's in my best judgment. And kind of, filtering out any other decisions so that she can be the one in control. And I think that she's kind of designed that purposely the whole time, just requesting to be the chief science officer because she could have wiped her hands of it. You know what I mean? Like she knew that the whole thing with Omega could potentially even look badly on her and anybody else that, I mean, if you didn't really want to be part of that, you would be basically wanting to kind of like fall into the cracks and not have anybody really pay attention to you. But she's doing just the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really curious to see where Omega's plan goes when this is all said and done. She pulled down the panels and looked like she found space, and she tells them that's our way out of here. But that's just a tease to the audience because I really don't see how she's getting out of there from her. So we'll see.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's shift gears to the rest of the team, and we first find them on the abandoned cloning facilities that are hanging there in the atmosphere of Boravio. And we previously saw those in season 1, episode 9, which is called Bounty Lost, and that was the conflict between Cad Bane and Ross, your favorite, Fennec Shand, or one of your favorites, I should say. And they are there waiting for Echo to show up in his shuttle. So we've got Rampart in this episode. For a guy who was fairly despicable in, first 2 seasons of Bad Batch, he's a character I'm really growing to enjoy. He's cantankerous a bit with these guys, but he easily falls back into the role of the Imperial, and He's always got something at the tip of his tongue to say to them, and no matter the fact that he has no power in this arrangement at all, he still keeps trying to wield it. So, what are your thoughts and what's your take on Rampart, Ross?
I think he's hilarious right now, but he's been humbled quite a bit. Now he goes from leading all of these people to arguing with a single partner Ugnaught as they're doing their things in the mining facility, and no one cares what he says anymore. So he's kind of lost, I think, in certain ways. But as he's starting to get into this role with these guys, even though they don't do it the proper way or the way that he would find to be appropriate, he still likes, I think, being part of a team, and the fact that they are putting him at times in that situation where you need to take the lead on this. But remember, we rescued you. The Empire put you in jail. So remember that before you try to turn turncoat on us here. So I think he's great. I think one thing that I love is, even though Wrecker still has his moments of comedy, Rampart's kind of taken that pressure off of Wrecker's character a little bit. And we get so much, as you talked about, with his quick quips, how he says things. He's still just an arrogant SOB that you may not want to deal with in regular life, but it's working, and it's very fun, at least through this episode.
Oh yeah, he's so snarky. I love it. I really do. And Dennis, you coined the hashtag rugged Rampart last week when we were talking about this. So he got a little less rugged tonight, but to your point too, Ross, he was even saying things like, "Oh, I missed this," when he was bossing people around and kind of getting back into that role. But it was cracking me up because when they gave him the uniform, he's like, "I can't wear this. This is a captain's uniform. I'm a vice admiral." And they're just like, the Bad Batch is just like, whatever. But quick aside, we'll put a pin in this, but what they scrubbed their armor, but we have to come back to that. But at any rate, so a couple other things with that too, when he was talking to Crosshair and, talking about, I don't really want to do this. And Crosshair said, "Well, you have to trust us, just like we have to trust you." That's a leaps and bounds thing, I think, for Crosshair even too, is to be able to have that kind of relationship. But I really am starting to like Rampart quite a bit. He is that surprisingly up there character for me. But what do you think, Dennis?
Oh, I think his performance in this is awesome. I think he's a lot of fun. Those lines you picked out, "I can't wear this." And they just gave him that blank stare. And he responds like, "They're stupid. This is a captain's uniform. I'm a vice admiral." And then, at one point they say something to him and he's like, and he repeats the line with a "sir" at the end. And they're like, "Don't press it. It's not happening, man." But, and when he walks up to the two stormtroopers that are guarding the control room and he rattles off that standing Imperial order. I looked it up. It was nothing that we've seen before, apparently. I was hoping it would be something because the stormtroopers seemed to know what it was. But he really just gets right back into that role that he hasn't had an opportunity to use for months now, at the very least. I'm not exactly sure how long it's been since he was thrown in prison. But, I think what's interesting about this is that the Bad Batch is right to be concerned that he could turn on them. But there really isn't an opportunity for Rampart to redeem himself with the Empire, because he was made the public scapegoat for what happened on Camino with Tapoca City, and that what happened with the clones and their decisions, that was his failure. And so it's not like he can reclaim that life as a vice admiral. He's been washed out from that life. And so he really doesn't have a choice but to go along with this. That doesn't mean he has to cooperate as much as he does, but I think it's been remarkable just how he's dived into the mission, even though he protests back pretty much every chance he gets for it there.
Yeah, indeed.
Jay, you brought up the Batch scraping the markings off of their armor. I'm going to give you the first shot. talking about that a little bit, because I feel like that is extremely significant just beyond them trying to be disguised.
Yeah, well, first thing I think of is all my cosplay friends probably going, "No!" kind of a thing because, they worked so hard to like create the armor for this season. But no, I just again, it's that level of commitment that they're showing, that they're willing to give up, that individuality that they worked so hard to create for themselves for Omega, just for the greater good or whatever you want to call it. But, obviously they had to do it, but they didn't even question it. It was just like, all right, I scrubbed all the armor, and that was just kind of the end of it. And if you weren't really paying attention to that specifically, the aesthetic of that, then it probably would have went just like right over your head. Maybe you would have, oh yeah, their armor is like plain now. But I think that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Ross?
It scared me immediately because I was just like, oh, is this where the idea of a death trooper comes from? So
Ooh.
that's, and hoping that none of them are put down that path or anything. But that's, soon as that went all black, I was just thinking, oh, this, maybe that's where the death trooper idea comes from. And then the other part of me that, complete fantasy world is just like, ooh, that's a very blank slate if they meet Sabine Wren somewhere.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
those are my thoughts there. I completely agree with the two of you that wasn't just some, hey, we'll just do this. Like, something comes of that completely being burned off and,
Yeah.
revamped or matted or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, because they're basically back to being not really regs, but they have no individuality. And so if something happens, who's to identify them for who they truly are, unless they actually know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay, you're going down the road that I was thinking here, which is, a couple episodes ago, they lost their ship. They lost a Marauder. That was their home. We haven't seen Gonki in a while.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Now,
Did he come out of the water when? Because I don't remember seeing him come out of the water when he and Wrecker got blown.
yeah, I can't remember if he
Blown
was
away.
in Shep's place on Pabu or not, but
Yeah.
they've lost their home, they've lost Gonki, they lost all their personal stuff that was in that ship. Their armor, as you were suggesting, Jay, is one of the things that set them apart. And while it still is remarkably different than what everyone else says, someone points out to them, this is not regulation, and that's fine. But their look, the bullseye that Crosshair has over one eye on his armor, he also got reflected in his skin.
Yeah.
The markings that Hunter has, that the face that Wrecker's got painted on his helmet, that's all gone now. They're losing a lot of their identity through this, and that's kind of sad, and it's worrisome that we got this progression going on for a few episodes. What's the theme that the creators of this show are, Brad Rao, Jennifer Corbett, Dave Filoni, and them are trying to tell us about the Bad Batch and what's going to happen to them. They're Hunter specifically says that they're going to go to Tantiss and free Omega and the clones. He's on board with that now. That's not a mission he wanted to be involved with earlier. So what else are they going to sacrifice to make all this happen? Because they're sacrificing a lot. No, they didn't consciously choose to lose the Marauder. That was blown up by the CX clone, whatever they were calling them at that point. But they are losing things in pursuit of this goal. So bottom line, it's made me very worried about what happens to these guys in 2 more episodes at the end of the season.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be wrecked. And as you said that too, I thought to myself, oh no, that means Lula is actually gone now, like the original Lula. So we've got the makeshift one that Emerie, had given to Omega, and now the little girl has that was Omega's, but she doesn't actually have.
Did that get
Lula
left behind though on
anymore.
Pabu? Was that one of the things that Omega was putting in the
That was
museum?
one of the two. It
Oh
was
yeah,
text
because it was
goggles.
text goggles, and
Yeah.
yes, you're right. So that did survive. Okay, yes. Thank you for setting me straight.
No worries.
And Dennis, I'm curious, even if we can even almost flip that, where they're losing the individuality, but they're also doing that for a purpose of we're giving up our individual traits and what we always felt made us stand out, because none of that matters right now unless we can get Omega. So
Mhm.
it could go sideways in a bad way, but it could also go in an incredible way of, hey, we know how to work together now and be part of a unit. And they've learned that from working with different people as well at this point. So I think that's an exciting opportunity, but it's also, hey, where's Filoni going to take this? Because this could
Mhm.
go,
Yeah.
I mean, this is flip of a coin at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a real opportunity to for victory and to break our hearts. I'm not sure how else better to describe it than that. But
Mhm.
so the infiltration of the space station, a lot of great moments here. We kind of hit on some of them with the way that Rampart's talking to the various Imperials. He dresses down that lieutenant that shows up and tells him that this is classified and he better go talk to Tarkin. So as I was saying, there's a lot of great moments there that happen on the space station. Rampart throwing his fake authority around. The control room just was so awesome to see. Shades of the Death
Yes.
Star and from A New Hope, up to Echo using his little scomp link and trying to break through the encryption and find out what's going on with that ship. Any of those moments stand out to either one of you?
Yeah, I loved, and it's funny because I got a text from Colby Mead about it, is how much we loved Wrecker wearing the lieutenant's hat after
Mm.
he knocks him
Yes.
out, and it looks so funny, and it happens so fast, but he's wearing the lieutenant's hat that he's knocked out as he walks out, and then puts his hat on him before they all get back on to get out of there. That was a super light moment within all of this, like, in a very hectic time, and he's still finding a way to bring a little bit of that levity into there. The only way that only Wrecker can do it that way.
That's so
Mhm.
true. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like you, Dennis, I picked up right away on that control room, and it was, yeah, definitely like a New Hope control room kind of thing. I was almost wondering if they're like, "We're fine. We're all fine here now. How are you?" Kind of a thing.
Mhm. And I love the little sequence where Echo is running off to infiltrate the science vessel, and he gets to that hangar, and those 4 astromechs show up, and the first one bumps into him and turns around and kind of
Yeah.
whistle tells him off. And so Echo makes his way over to the little chute that's again out of New Hope from the Sandcrawler, and
Mhm.
bides his time so he can get up into that. And what's even better is that it sucks up the 4 astromechs, and then it goes even lower to suck up a little mouse droid. That
Yeah.
that just made me smile. I thought
Who
that was
like
such a
squeals as it goes up into the
yeah,
thing.
Uh-huh.
such a fun little touch there with all of that. And meanwhile, you got that very suspicious clone commando that's trying to figure out what's going on here, and doesn't find anything. So,
Yeah, that was so good.
all right, and that leads us up to the final scene we have on all this, where Echo is aboard the science vessel. He gets into the cargo bay and starts hacking that to bring down the proximity sensor so that the rest of the batch and Rampart on the Imperial shuttle can lock on to that right as it goes to light speed and heads off towards Tantiss. That was such an incredibly well choreographed scene. It kept you on the edge of your seat. Are they going to pull this off? Because we've already seen things fail for them before. When Crosshair missed with the tracker, they've had setbacks. Was this going to be another one? But no, they got it. So they're on their way. But the way they just pace the whole thing out, and then they go to light speed, and boom, that's the end of the episode. Chills. That was just such an incredible way to conclude the
Yeah.
episode. What were your all's reactions?
It was, I put down my coffee cup and took a shot. You know? It was like, whew, okay. This is the way to start a Wednesday here. So, because I watch before work on Wednesday because I don't want to have a chance of a spoiler anywhere. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, that's what this is all about. Like, it was a great episode in that regard where, they've been building tension over the course of 3 seasons, but it is really every step now is what can go wrong.
Right.
And
It's
now they're finding oh, here's something that worked. And then what I really love here, and as we've talked about Rampart a lot and kind of what his role is or could be, he's so against everything happening because it's no, we're cutting it too close. Abort, don't do this. And Crosshair says, relax. Echo's on it.
Yes.
Yes, love that.
And all I want to like, I'm imagining, in the very near future, like if it's the opening scene is, I can't believe you guys trusted him. Or when does that come through of him seeing that this group trusts each other and put their lives in each other's hands in these just dire situations, and they do it without flinching. So I think that's going to impress him. And it would be interesting to see if that brings him over to the other side at all. Seeing, as you've already mentioned, he probably doesn't have a seat at any table at the Empire.
Oh no, definitely not. Yeah, he's an outcast for sure. So, yeah, he's kind of in that same vein in some ways as Callus. Whereas, I could see him maybe potentially switching sides because he's been betrayed. He has, like you said, he has no seat with the Imperials in the Empire. So seeing this camaraderie and seeing this trust and seeing these guys just work together like clockwork, it might end up inspiring him to, end up being an asset or an ally for them. So I I almost wonder if it's going to be, like Callus and Zeb being the best friends. Maybe it'll be Rampart and Wrecker.
I'm here for it. I am here for
I
it.
know, right? Like, oh, we could do a whole thing on that. But I have to say, I didn't know if they were actually going to make it. You kind of think, oh, of course they are. But then there's part of you that said, no, there's too much stake in this whole series this time around that anything can happen. And so you don't take anything for granted. And so I literally was holding my breath, and then I let the breath out and I was like, oh, that was it. The end credits come on, and then Mickey Mouse Clubhouse comes on as the next
Okay.
the next suggested thing.
Since I talked about that in last episode, no fewer than 5 people have sent me screenshots of once the Bad Batch has ended, and the next thing recommended to them by Disney Plus is the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I love this. It's a lot of fun. I don't know why Disney Plus is recommending the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse after this, but it makes me laugh every time I see it now.
Right. Now it's
they're
like
starting-
an inside joke.
Yeah, they're starting to know that you've been put through the ringer, and maybe you need a little cleanser before you get
I
on
guess.
with the rest of your day.
Oh. Oh my gosh. I have to ask you guys too, and Dennis, I want to hear your thoughts as well on the last subject, but I want to throw this out there and put a pin in this. If there was any thought whatsoever, because we need to talk about Omega trying to figure out how to get those panels off and everything, if we thought maybe eventually this is setting up them missing each other. So I want to get your thoughts first on.
Hope not, because there's only 2 episodes left. And
Right.
unless that last episode is like an hour long, I don't know that they have enough time to recover from something like that. I don't know how this all ends. As Ross was pointing out, we've got a coin here. On heads, it is they've sacrificed so much, and there's this reward for doing so to get Omega back, and they'll free some of these clones on Tantiss. Tails, and there's some sort of a disaster. I still think there's going to be some sort of a victory for the good guys when this is all said and done, but it could come at great expense when it's all said and done as well. And so we just don't know, and you can't take anything for granted with this series on the fate of the characters on that. So, but I really hope it, I'm looking forward to that reunion on Tantiss with the Bad Batch and Omega, especially because this time you've got everyone in the Bad Batch. They're seeing everything eye to eye finally, where they weren't. Crosshair was on a different side, was at a different place at the beginning of this season. But I got a side point I want to make from that, but Ross, I'll let you chime in on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit terrified of how easily Omega is willing to sacrifice herself. And that doesn't mean there aren't some very valuable pieces there, including the captured clones, Nala Se, Emerie with what she knows. If people are just looking for intel of what the Emperor is up to and what Hemlock are up to, there are victories that can be taken out of there that are not Omega. And that almost scares me more than anything right now. Is just like, oh yeah, look at all these great things that happen, but it came at this cost. Kind of like you mentioned having that. And again, that's where I just need it to play out. I need to get through these 2 weeks so I don't have all these cogs turning saying like, well, what if this, what if that? Like, I just want to watch it and see what happens, because so much can happen. And regardless of what happens, Omega has been such a gift to me, to the Star Wars galaxy, universe, canon, whatever. And I know a lot of people were very annoyed with her from the beginning, but what a journey and what a character development, and someone who has helped and touched so many other different characters and character types throughout the galaxy.
Ahsoka Part 2.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. But no, very well said, Ross. And again, I like you guys, I'm so on the edge of my seat because all I kept thinking was, okay, Omega's talking about breaking out, taking these kids with her. She's pulling these panels down, and I also want to know how she got them put back so fast. But anyway, and then all I can think of is, oh my gosh, like what happens if the Bad Batch gets there and then she's already gone? Like that's the, and they, like I said, and they miss each other. Ugh, I'm so afraid for that.
Yeah, I don't need more to worry about with these characters, Jay. Okay, we're about to run out of time here, so I'm going to send it around the table for any last points that anybody has. I'm going to go ahead and just give mine first. Ross, you touched on this just a bit ago when Rampart is freaking out that they don't have enough time, that once Echo's on that ship. And Crosshair says, hey, relax, Echo's got this. And I think that is like low key one of the best moments of this episode, simply because we saw, how many episodes ago was it, when they were there on Teth, the old monastery that Cody and them were working out of, or Rex was working out of, and Hauser is angry at Crosshair, and then at one point he turns to Crosshair and says, you're different. What's changed? And Crosshair explains how he was following the Empire out of a sense of loyalty, but loyalty is a two-way street, and the Empire wasn't showing it in return. And and once he realized that, he understood how the Empire failed him and that he was working with the wrong people. And then Omega garnered his loyalty, and so now he's back with the Bad Batch. And I think this episode highlighted that in a very low-key way, and I applaud it for it, because when my first reaction to this episode is there was not a lot of thematic type things that happened, but that simple statement that Echo's got this, that's Crosshair investing the loyalty that he cherishes so much back into his brothers, and telling someone who has had a huge loyalty problem, Rampart, he doesn't so much come out and say, this is why I'm no longer with you guys anymore, but it is, I'm with the right guys. And that just was a understated huge moment for me. But Ross, you got a final point for us on this?
No, I love that, obviously. And it is, again, back to that character development and how much so many of these characters, especially the Bad Batch, have grown. For my moment, I'm going to take Omega's final words, and she says, "Our way out." And that goes right with One Way Out.
Oh, yeah.
From Andor. And they are similar situations. They are what played in this a little bit for me right from the beginning. All throughout Andor, they kept showing the shape of the cog everywhere you went. Especially during this episode, they kept showing the circle. And if you look at the Imperial insignia, the cog is trapped inside a circle. So,
oh wow,
are these playing off of one each other? Is the science and what Palpatine is obsessed with, is that what restricts and eventually leads to the downfall of the Empire?
Oh, wow. I love that. Yes. I love that connection because, Dennis was talking about the idea of the vault being very similar to a prison. And I know we had talked about that, and Dennis pointed out that it's a lot like Narkina 5 too. And like you were just saying, oh, wow, that gives me the chills. Totally gives me the chills. Yeah, you guys pointed out so many great things, and I would definitely echo all of those. Is there an echo in here? Yes, here I am. But and then there was also just some of that well-placed humor too that we know and love so much. And I think one of my favorite lines by Rampart, other than the ones that we just mentioned, was when they were trying to get around together, and he said, "You stand out like overheated Gamorreans." That cracked me up because, of course, it's one of those things that, do you have to know all about Star Wars and what a Gamorrean is to get that that's a joke? But it just makes it so much better because you do.
Yeah, I love that joke.
It makes me wonder. It makes me wonder what is an overheated Gamorrean like.
I don't want to know.
Right.
Yeesh. Okay. Yikes.
On that note.
Yeah. Well, it was a great conversation, guys. Ross, thanks for joining us for this. This has been fantastic.
No, thank you. It's always, like I said, it's always an honor. I think you two are two of the best. And, whether it is just liking an Instagram post or us chatting a little bit, but especially when we get to kind of talk here, I consider every time special. So thank you both so much.
Of course.
Oh,
Of course.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you on for sure.
Indeed. Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of the Bad Batch. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, you can get our discussion of the final 2 episodes coming up. Oh, I hate saying that.
I know.
But there we are. Just by hitting that subscribe button on your podcast, your choice. I'd also like to remind you that you can find all episodes of the show over on retrozap.com, all previous 717 of them. RetroZap is also home to several other great podcasts covering everything from the MCU and DC, pop culture, retro culture, and things like Star Trek. And we greatly appreciate your 5-star ratings, reviews on whatever podcatcher it is that you use to listen to your podcast, especially if that's Apple Podcasts. So if you wouldn't mind, we'd appreciate if you would share your favorite episodes on social media with your friends. So that having been said, Jay, you want to remind everybody what those social media contacts are one more time?
Absolutely. So we are most easily found on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust. And we have had several people reaching out to us here lately. So it's been great to interact through DMs and just through reviews and things like that. So please keep it coming. And we also have a Pinterest page with a whole bunch of fun boards to look through. And as Dennis was mentioning with YouTube, we actually have 2 different YouTube outlets now. So we have the regular YouTube channel and our YouTube music channel. So head over to both of those, like and subscribe. And if you want to continue this conversation or any other concerning any of our episodes or anything Star Wars related, you can head over to our Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server. And the link for that is actually in the show notes. And so you can, once again, you can either hit us up or you can go to any of the other multiple rooms of the RetroZap channel over there. So all kinds of geekery things going on. Chances are you'll find something fun to talk about. And then we also have a TeePublic store. So we have 7 different show logo designs available on tons of different products. And once again, that link is also in our show notes. And we got lots of links in our show notes. And that's a great thing. And our Saber Masters deal is going on right now still as well. And so we are still working with Saber Masters, and we have our referral code Stardust that you can use at checkout that will receive you $10 extra off of your purchase. And it also helps to support the show. So they still have their 2-for-1 deal going on right now on the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0. And so you can also just go straight to sabermasters.com. And once again, that link will be in our show notes. So Ross, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so kind of the places I talked about at the beginning, but I'll really hit here. Check out fanthatracks.com. So that is where I get to add my reviews. It's part of a group review on each episode of the Bad Batch, or really each series of Disney Plus. We do each episode there. So all from the written component. And this it's the best when I get to do a podcast first and get to process things and hear other people's thoughts. And then I sit down and write. So this one will be a very rich experience, especially thanks to the two of you.
Oh, well, thank you. And Fantha Tracks is definitely our number one source for all of the news and things that we use here on the show as well. So thank you for your hard work over there as well. So with that, Dennis, why don't you let everybody know what you've got going on with Warp Trails and any other fun stuff?
Yeah, so my wife and I have been covering sorry about that. Wife and I have been covering season 5 of Star Trek Discovery over on Warp Trails. We're 3 episodes in, getting ready to record our discussion of the 4th episode of the season. Having a good time doing it. So if you want to hear what we have to say about Star Trek, just head over to the Rest of That podcast feed and you can find our discussions there. Jay, Cosplay-mageddon rolls on. What is the latest?
Well, just wrapping up Fan Expo Cleveland just last weekend and still sifting through all the pictures and things like that. I had a fantastic time and I was able to interact with a lot of amazing fans and photographers and videographers and celebrities and the like. And you're going to get to hear about that very soon on an upcoming episode of World Between Worlds in a little bit more detail. And coming up, I also have a couple of appearances at the first part of May for May the 4th. So I will be at 2 different events actually on May the 4th, and I will have some more details about that coming up very soon. So if you want to follow all of my adventures, you can do that on Instagram at j.snipscosplay. And quick aside, I did recently debut that original concept Mandalorian, and I was super, super happy with the way that it turned out. So that's based on Tahiri Vela. And again, you can check that out at j.snipscosplay.
All right. So upcoming on the show on Monday, it's our weekly look at Star Wars news. And then on Wednesday, it is World Between Worlds, which is normally Jay's fashion and lifestyle product segment each month. This month, we're going to be focusing a bit on her cosplay and con experiences. So join us for that. So thank you all for listening to episode 718 of Podcast Stardust. And until next time, may the Force be